So hello guys, welcome to our third part on aggregate planning, and today what we are going to do will just be one exercise, which is this one here. And as a reminder, the first part was mainly about the introduction and the theoretical part about aggregate planning. What is aggregate planning? What are different challenges? All these things. So now in the second part, what we did was more about of a calculation, and the calculation that we did was a continuation from this. We did actually three parts. The first part is the first videos that we did, which was during our live session that we normally had, and we're talking about aggregate planning and the different policies with this question. Then the next thing is, we in the previous video part 2 we did this question here, which was actually explaining what is happening in aggregate planning with this company. So today we are going to do the third and final part, which is going to be this exercise. The main reason why we are doing different exercises is because the more you do exercises, the more you actually encounter different scenarios, and these scenarios will actually allow you to better understand aggregate planning, to better understand the different policies. You will find out that even though there are many exercises in aggregate planning, not all of them are the same. Some of them are, how do you call it, some of them are different with different policies left and right. So like the first exercise said one policy, the second one got different policies, and the third one that we will do will have different policies. Now it's not because we have done all these three that we have covered all the policies. There are so many policies depending on one company to another, but these one are the major one, and by the time you understand it, you can actually going to be able to solve all the exercises. So let's begin. So this exercise here was talking about this company that is manufacturing skateboard. They gave you already the forecast, and by now you might know what is this forecast, what it means, where we got it from. Obviously we didn't get it, it was just provided to us. You need to be able to know what are these costs, what is the meaning of this cost. And this was actually the statement from the first exercise, but we won't focus on this. We will focus on the third one. So the third one is saying, refer to question 1. The president of the firm has decided to shut down the plant for vacation and installing an installation of new equipment in period 4. So after installation, the cost per unit will remain the same, but the output rate for regular time will be 450. Now the regular output is the same as in period 1, 2, 3, and 0 for period 4, and 450 for each of the remaining period. Note though that the forecast of 400 in period 5 must be dealt with. Prepare an aggregate plan and compute the total cost. So in short, they're just saying that this company actually the president of the firm want to close the company for vacation, and while he's gonna close the company for vacation during that period in period 5, in period 4, that we're also going to install to make new installation, and right after that the output also for the regular time will be 450 for all the period that are coming after. This is what they're saying. So, and they also say that note that the forecast of 400 units in period 4 must be dealt with, which means that initially this was the forecast, but in period 4 now we're going to have a forecast of 400 and it must be dealt with, which means that forecast still apply in that period. So how do we go about that? I'm still going to use the same table that we used in the previous exercise, so I'm just going to have to remove few things, which is mainly these other data. So the forecast is still the same because we're still referring to the first example. The forecast is still 200, 200, 300, 400, 500, and 200 with a total of 1.8. But one thing that we need to focus on here, they say that the cost per unit will remain the same, but the output rate of regular time will be 450. This 450 here, they say that the output of the regular time will be 450. So the regular output is the same as in example 1 from period 1, 2, and 3, 0 for period 4, and 450 for the remaining of them. So the regular time in the first example is 300 according to what they are saying here. They say that assume that a level output rate of 400 for regular time. So it means that in the first example our regular time is 300, but then it will be 0 for period 4 and 450 for the remaining. So we go back to our table. The regular time here we are getting 300, 300, 300. Then in period 4, they say the forecast is, they say that the regular time is 0, 0 for period 4 and 450 for each of the remaining period. Each because we only have 2 periods that remain, period 4, 5, and 6, where we have 450 and we have 450 here. Again, the first thing that we are going to do, like I told you, is to do the total so that we know if we will still need overtime or we won't need overtime. But so far, nothing about overtime was mentioned. So we have 300, 300 plus 300 again, plus 450 plus 450. The total gives us exactly 1.8, which means that because it's 1.8 and these values are equal, we won't use overtime. As a matter of fact, even when you look at this table, at this part here, they're not talking about anything about overtime or subcontract. So the first is, so what we are going to do here, we do again, there's no overtime during this period. Nothing was mentioned about overtime, and same applies to the subcontract. We didn't have anything in this case here, so we still have cross here. So the output minus forecast, the principle is the same. The customer ordered 200, but we can produce 300, so we'll have an excessive stock of 100. The second one, we still need to produce 200. Well, the customer wanted 200, we produce 300, we have an excessive stock of 100. In the third one, this is exactly, it's perfect. The customer wanted 300, we produce 300, we are sorted, it's 0. The fourth one, the customer wanted 400, we didn't produce anything. Remember, the company was closed. So when we come back, we owe the customer 400. This is very huge because we didn't work. Now in the next period, the customer wanted 500, we produced only 450. That means we owe the customer 50 unit. So we have a 50 unit here. In the fourth period now, in the last period, the customer wanted 200 units, and during that time we produced more than even what the customer wanted. So it's more like we have 250 that is additional to what the customer wanted. So in this place we sorted. So the next thing is for us to go with the inventory. Remember, they always say that we're still referring to the previous example whereby the beginning inventory will be 0 and the remaining, we need to start with 0 and end the period with 0. So we are starting our period 1 with 0. We started with 0. The customer, we finished the day with 100 more units. That would be our ending inventory. This ending inventory is going to start again from is going to be our starting inventory from period 2, which is 100 unit. Now in period 2 we produce 100 more unit plus the one that we ended up with, so we have 100 plus 100, which gives us 200 units. In the third period, we produced 200 units. Well, we didn't produce. These 200 units are coming from the ending inventory of period 2. And yet in period 3, we didn't owe anything, so we still remain with our 200 here. Now in the fourth period, whatever we ended up with in our third period here in period 3, we're going to start with it in period 4, which is 200. Again, we have 300 here. Now, when we have this 200, you notice that in period 4, we owe the customer 400 units because we didn't work. And because we didn't work, we only got 200 in stock. We will give him all the 200 that we have produced. So it's 400 minus 200. It is 0 that will be left with. And then we find out that we will have a backlog of 200 units. So we go back to our backlog. Here we have 200. Why a backlog of 200? Because we have only 200 in stock. The customer, we owe the customer 400 units. So we gave him 200. We left with another 200 here that we still need to complete. But now you find out that in period 4, we ended up with a 0 inventory. So in period 5, we will start again with a 0. And as if it wasn't enough, in period 5, the customer wanted 400 units. We only got 450. We still owe him 50 units again. Remember, our inventory is still 0, so there's nothing that we can do. We cannot have a negative inventory. Remember, inventory, it is number of units. You cannot say we have negative 10 units. So in this case, it's still 0, but we still owe the customer 50 units. So you find out that we are not just going to put 50. We will put 250 that is coming from the 200 that we owe him here, plus the 50 that we owe him in this part. So it's more like we have 200 that we owe him in period 4. And in period 5, we still owe the customer 50 units again in addition to the 200. So we have a 250. Now this 0 here is going back again. We're going to start with it in the next period, which should be 0. But then here, thanks God, we produced more than the customer wanted, which is 250 unit. So these 250 are exactly what we owe them. We owe them from period 4 and period 5, and in this case we have a 0. So these 250 are going to go straight to the backlog, and we are sorted, which confirms two things that I told you. The first one is that these values here are generally the same, that whenever you start, the ending and the beginning inventory of the last period should be 0. We forgot even to check this one here. So when you take 100 plus 100, it gives you 200. 200 plus 250, it gives you 450. 450 minus 450, we have a 0. So all our constraints are actually verified and we are sorted. But I'm going to start again from period 3. Try to emphasize on it a bit so that you understand what happened in the backlog. So from period 2, let me just restart. The beginning we got a 0 because we always start with a 0. The customer wanted 100 unit, 200, we gave him 200, we remain with 100. This is what we have. Then in the second period, because we ended up the first period with 0, the second we start with 100 plus the new output that we already got here, which the customer initially wanted 200, but we provided 300, so we are left with 100 unit. Plus these 100 that were coming from the ending inventory of period 1, we have now 200 units. In the third period, whatever we're left with in the second, we're gonna start with in the first. In the third period. And in this case, the customer wanted 300 units. We produced 300 units, which was still 0. And we started with 200 from the remaining second period. We're gonna still continue with it. There's nothing new. In the fourth period now, we started with the 200 units that we got, which are from period 3. But now in this period, the customer, there was still an order of 400 units, but we didn't work at all. And because we didn't work, we still owe the customer 400 units. But we still had 200 that were coming from our previous stock. So we give him the 200 first, we remain with 0, and we owe him 200. And this 200 is falling under the backlog because we owe him this. Then next period, period number 5, remember that in period number 4, we didn't work. We just provided what was remaining for for period 3. So we'd have a 0 again that start here. And this 0 applies also in period 5 because we reopened after manufacturing. We improved our regular time to 450. Minus the 500, we still owe the customer 50 unit. And we cannot put a negative inventory because we can't, it goes to the backlog. But we remember that we have another backlog from the previous unit, which will still be 200 plus the 50 that we have, it gives us 250. Again, I insist on the fact that we didn't put negative 250 like between bracket, or we didn't put a negative number. You don't, because it is a backlog. We already know that it is negative. So it means that we started with 0, we ended up with 0. So in period 6, obviously we'll still start with 0. But in period 6, the customer wanted 200 units. We only manufactured, well, not only, we produced even more than expected, 450. That means we have an excess stock of 250. And this excess stock here is going to be used now to compensate on the 250 that is coming from period 5, and we are sorted. Then the next thing is we go back to the cost. Exactly like I told you, in this part here, the output does not apply. We go straight to the regular. And the cost that we are using, according to the statement, they say that the costs per unit remain the same. So what happened is, like, we go back to our cost in the first exercise. We have the first one, which is the regular time, which is 2 rand. So it means that the regular time for the first one here, so we have the regular time here. For the first period is 300 times 2. We have a regular time of 600. In this case, we still have 600. Then we still have 600. So 2 times 300 times 300 times 300 here. Then the next one, we have 2 times 0. Remember, in this period, we didn't produce anything. We still have a 0. And in the fifth and the sixth period, we have 450 times 2, they give us 900. Then we have 900. Then with the values that we have here, 900 plus we have 1.8 plus 1.8, which gives us 360 plus 100, yes, which gives us 3.6. So we have 360. I mean 3,600. Then the overtime here, we go back. Did we use any overtime? We didn't in this policy. So the policy of the organization in this period was not to use any overtime nor subcontract, so we are covered here. The inventory, remember, we still use the average inventory here, but we didn't calculate our average inventory. So we go back. The average inventory is 0 plus 100 divided by 2, you have 50. Period 3, 1 plus 100 plus 200, 300 divided by 2, you have 150. 200 plus 200 divided by 2, which is 400 divided by 2, we still have 200. 200 plus 0 divided by 2, it is 100. Then we have 0 plus 0 divided by 0 by 2, it's 0. And here we have another 0. So the inventory cost, based on the cost that we have here, what is the inventory? We have 1 rand here. So the 1 rand that we have, it means that all the values that are going to be here, all of them will still apply, because it's more like we will have 50 times 50. It's 50 times 1, which gives you 1. 150 times 1, it gives you 1. 200 times 1 is still 1. We're taking the average, which means that in this case here, it's just the same values that we are going to pass. Nothing is changing. So we pass these values like this, and we sorted. Then the back orders. Did we use any back orders? The back orders are coming from the backlogs. Yes, we had, mainly in period 4 and in period 5. Those are the period whereby the customer wanted more than what we could provide. That's what we gave them in the previous period. So how much is it for the backlog? According to the back order here, it's 5 rand for every skateboard. And in this case, we owe the customer 200 skateboard. Times 5, it gives us 1,000 skateboard. Then in the next period here, we owe the customer 250. Times 5, it gives us 1,250. So now with the information that we have, we can still do the total for the columns and the total for the rows. So in this case, we have done the total for the regular time. We can now do the total for the inventory. The total of inventory gives us 50 plus 150 plus 200 plus 100, which gives us an average, which gives us a value of 500 rand. 500 units, sorry. So we have 500 units. Then in this case here, we have 1000 plus 1250, which gives us 2250. Then we calculate the total here for the columns. The total is 600 plus 50, which gives us 650. Then here we have 750. Then here we have 800, because it's 600 plus 200. Then here we have 1100. Then in the next one, we have 900 plus 1250, which gives us 2150. The next year we only have 900. So we just need to do the total of this row and compare it with the total of the column to see if it's the same. So we have 650 plus 750 plus 800 plus 1100 plus 2150 plus 900. Then the value that we get is 6350. 6350. Then we need to calculate the same value here for the columns. Well, the total does not involve this, because in this case we are talking about number of units here, while here we have translated them in cost. So we just calculate the total of the numbers that we have there, which is 600 plus 500 plus 2250, which gives us 6350 again on the dot, which means that the value that we got here is the final answer. Again, you will find out that this value here, it means that if we have to use this policy of working every day, but then we try to, because you are working every day, in period 4 we go on vacation and we come back with an improved facility, it will cost us more, because remember, like in this period we lost almost 400 units because we went in vacation. So it means that this value here of 6,350 is very it's a policy that is very expensive compared to the previous one, because the very first one here gave us 4,700. The second one here gave us 4,650, and the third one, this one here, gave us 6,350. So this one is the most expensive one. The company can still decide to go for it if they don't have any choice, but you find out that this is the most expensive policy, and depending on the plan and the budget of the company, they can either decide to choose the previous one. But if I had to ask you the question to know which one is the best, you will go for the second one here, because it's all the lowest planning cost. And now you understand why it is called aggregate planning, because we have aggregated the cost of all the production from period 1 to period 6. We managed to think that if we have to do all this calculation or these policies, this is the cost that we are going to get. So this is actually an aggregated cost of all the information that we needed. So this is it about this video and as well as this section. I really hope that this section was really helpful and insightful. If you have any question, if you have any concern, let me know in the comment section, or you can just leave an email and we will try to help you. So thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe to the page, and I wish you a very nice day and take care and stay at home.